Hey, hi-ho, Lions fans. Welcome to the Detroit Lions podcast, training camp party. How are we doing today? Thank you, everybody, for coming out. We really appreciate you all being here. As you can see, special guests, Dan Miller has joined us on the right. Good to be here. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Also, you know Jeff the Riz Risden, and longtime friend of the show, hater of Case, Justin Rogers. How you doing, Justin?
I know.
Maybe next time. All right, we got a lot to talk about today. We had the first day of training camp open to season ticket holders. How many went to training camp today? Yeah. Well, they didn't. I was there. It was a good time. A lot to see, a lot going on with the team, and we're going to break down what we saw, and then we're going to do some pontificating about the team from there. So, Riz, why don't we give it to you first, and let you kind of run a little and talk about some of what you saw out on the field today.
Yeah, we had a good day. It was my second day at camp. I missed the first 2 days, but Justin and Dan were there, obviously. But I spent yesterday watching the defensive backs. Today was more about wide receivers, more about linebackers, more about Goff and Tim Boyle, who I hate much less now than I did. For those of you who have been following along with my misadventures with the TB12 that we have here in Detroit now. We're not creating a quarterback controversy yet, but I will say that the worries that we had about Tim Boyle's arm strength coming out of minicamp, which was pretty ugly, they're gone now. Dude's got a hose, and it was nice to see that. Look, you guys know, I'm not super high on the offensive potential of this team, and I've seen very little in the last 2 days to dissuade that opinion. If you're looking for somebody to, blow smoke up Jared Goff's ass, that's not going to be me. It's probably not going to be Justin either. But on the positive note, the coaching staff, it's so great to see players that want to be coached and coaches that want to coach them. And we saw an incident today with Jamie Collins and Aubrey Pleasant that was very indicative of where this staff is and why you should be excited about it, why we are excited to cover the team, why we are excited about the potential with this team, because that was something that we saw today that would not have happened at all in the Matt Patricia era. It probably wouldn't have happened in the Jim Caldwell era. And it's very possible. We can't unfortunately break down exactly what it was, but it's something that we wanted to see very badly that's been missing from Detroit, and it was very uplifting to see it. And Justin knows what I'm talking about. Dan does too. In fact, Justin was standing next to me when it happened.
Yeah, maybe I'll give away a little bit more information if you're willing to.
Yeah.
So, it was red zone rep.
Yeah.
And a little bit of a bunch formation, and TJ Hawkinson leaped free, scored a touchdown, and Aubrey Pleasant wasn't happy. It wasn't the first time we saw him in this practice that he wasn't happy when something didn't go as scripted.
Definitely.
They installed these boards last year, and they basically run all 22 replays from both angles after every play. And so Pleasant runs over, and he asked the replay assistant to run the replay. And Collins came over, and it was kind of hashing out what happened on the break. Why did Hawkinson leap free? Was it Pleasant's defensive backs that screwed up? Was it the linebackers that screwed up? Where was the miscommunication? And after a few minutes, they hashed out. First teams went back out there in a few more reps, 3 reps. Defense didn't allow a touchdown that time, and Pleasant was jacked.
Yes,
he was very
was
happy with the adjustment that was made in that little stretch.
Yeah, and you have to give Jamie Collins some credit too, because he wanted to understand why the defense didn't work, and he was very proactive in going to Aubrey and say, hey, can we go watch this? And then they got it queued right up, and we watched it, and we eavesdropped on them, and it was really, really cool to see the interaction on that. So that's something that we didn't see in the last few years here, and that's good teams do this. I'll go back to when I covered the Texans, and Bill O'Brien, for all his faults, was really good at that kind of stuff and encouraged that with his staff. And it worked. It made them a much more functional unit. It made them much more of a brotherhood. And I think that's Dan Campbell talks about that in every press conference, about how he's just trying to get all the players together and build for one goal and build a family and build a culture. And it's very tangible from our side, from those of us who've been around the team. And Justin and Dan are around a lot more than I am, but it's crazy.
I kind of like to get Dan's thought on just the change in personality of this team in the Dan Campbell era versus the Matt Patricia era. I mean, we've heard a lot of people talking about it, but you've always got such a great perspective. We'd love to hear what you think about how things have changed and how the players are reacting.
Well, I think it's palpable when you're out there just how much the intensity, not in terms of what they're doing on the field, but just in terms of the uneasiness, if that's a way to put it, is felt around the field. I just think it looks like guys, we've heard this coaching staff talk about watching tape last year and not seeing guys playing fast, seeing guys think too much. I think that just maybe I'm not coming up with the right word, but the fear factor, is that it, Justin?
Happiness.
Happiness, yeah, guys just out there playing and enjoying themselves. And just look, it's very easy when things didn't go well with a coach to sit here and question what they did. And I did a lot of work with Matt Patricia. I liked him personally. It didn't work. Bob Quinn didn't work. This is completely different. It's a different personality. They've talked about being collaborative from day one. There's no question about that. To Jeff's point, to Justin's point, it's worth the price of admission just to go out there and watch the coaching. There's an element of coaching, I think, and teaching, not so much coaching, but teaching that I don't know that we saw during the Patricia era. And Aubrey Pleasant by himself is worth the price of admission.
So here's the one guy I think epitomizes it. It's Tracy Walker.
Definitely.
And it worked into a story Dan Campbell told today, right? So Walker, through last season, you could tell there was no collaboration with the coaching staff. They brought in their guy in Harmon, and they said, we're going to try Walker somewhere different. They took him out of his comfort zone, and the results
and
were
just
terrible.
to interject, it was brutal from like the first day of camp for Tracy Walker on last year.
Yeah, like losing playing time to Will Harris, which made no sense. And Walker wasn't happy, and his performance slumped. And so you go, and this is a guy that year one, year two showed a lot of potential, like Pro Bowl.
Absolutely.
Trajectory, in my opinion. You know, I mean, obviously a lot of things gotta go right, but he was on that track. And so now you got Walker feeling rejuvenated, feeling happy, feeling heard. And Campbell tells the story today. He comes out to practice, and Walker comes bounding out of the locker room, chirping away. He's like, I'm gonna get you an interception today, coach. I'm gonna run it right over to you. And he didn't get an interception. And Campbell pulls him aside later, and he goes, That's a $50 fine. That's a fine. You can't say you're going to get an interception. And he goes, but you know what? I'm going to pay your fine for you, but you owe me 2 picks now. And so it's that dynamic. It's playful, but it's also he's still pushing him, but he's listening to him, and putting him in a position. Tracy Walker is a free safety heart. He can do a little bit of everything, but he is a free safety heart. They're not going to play a split safety look. I think Walker's going to throw him.
It's helped him so much, and he did a media session after practice yesterday, and you could just tell the relief that he has, and that he's free to do what he does best. He's not going to be forced into it. He's not going to be a square peg in a round hole, and he tried his best not to say anything negative about Matt Patricia or the prior regime, but you could tell in the body language and in the context that.
The coy laughter.
Yeah, exactly. It just wasn't working for him, and
and there's some guys that aren't biting their tongues either. There's clear comments that are made.
Yes,
insinuating just the difference. Now look, it has to translate to wins and losses, and that's ultimately the thing. It feels great right now, but you know what? It should feel great right now, and that's kind of the way it is with new coaching tests. But let me say this: the bottom line to all we're talking about is development and coaching, and the jet fuel for this turnaround is taking the young players that were already here and turning them into formidable, contributing, who knows how high their ceiling is players. Walker, Okuda, Oruwariye, Penasini, on down the line, guys that were already here, Tafai, whoever you want, Will Harris. Throw them all in there, but the key is optimizing their potential, and we didn't see enough guys get better during the previous regime.
You do say that, right, it all goes on wins, no question.
Absolutely.
You know what? I get the impression Dan Campbell is like Jim Caldwell. Even if they don't win, I think the players are going to love playing for him. They're going to like him. It's not going to get old for the players. Obviously, that carries a different tone with fans. It carries a different tone with media. The expectation on the outside is wins. But somebody was asking me about will Campbell's shtick get old, right? You know, the up downs. And I said, No, because it's authentic. It's genuine, and I think that will always resonate with the players that play for him.
And to that point, Justin, I think outside of the organization, and in particular driven by national media, which gets a photo instead of the full-length movie,
Right.
people make much more out of that than needs to be made out of that. He's unique, but it's not like he's out there running around in an Indy helmet during practice. He's out there working, and they respect, I think, what he's trying to do.
They only get up to the kneecaps of the
Yeah, it is amazing to me. And it's, you know, I know you do these interviews too, Justin, when you talk to people around the country and they'll say, well, why are you always talking about biting? It's like, you're concentrating on 30 seconds of a 90-minute press conference.
That's all he got, though.
And do you know what who he was talking to about the kneecaps? He was talking to his players, and he was talking to the fans. And you know who needed to hear that? That needed to hear that fired up tone of how we're going to approach this thing? The players and the fans.
Yep.
Not the guys sitting there, you know, trying to get calls at X Sports Radio, whatever it is, who wants to make fun of them for that 30-second clip and completely ignores the other 89 minutes and 30 seconds of a press
Good math
conference.
skills, Dan.
One of the things we've talked about with Brad Holmes that we've seen, kind of he's exhibited, and you're seeing with Dan Campbell, he may have a little bit of a shtick or whatever. Dan Campbell, I think, is people are saying maybe he's not so smart. If that's the case, he's dumb like a fox. The guy is a lot smarter than folks think. He could use that show too. Anyway, the other side of it,
If anybody's saying that, I don't think, honestly, and again, I think you need to preface this with everything that we're talking about will boil down to wins and losses, but if anybody's insinuating that he's not smart or is a knucklehead or something like that, you haven't met him, you haven't talked.
They don't know him. They're not sitting for the full press conference. They're not grasping what he's doing. And the way he breaks down what plays are going on and what, you know, the football concepts, it's clear he's very football intelligent. I think he's fairly intelligent outside of that too, just some of the allusions that he makes and the references that he does. This is not a meathead, and unfortunately, Justin will vouch for this. When we're doing radio shows around other places in the country, it's all kneecaps, it's all meathead, it's all derisive, and
It certainly starts that way.
yeah.
I'll tell you what he and Brad Holmes are practicing. We've talked about it on the show a little bit. Is servant leadership, and if you want to understand how they're leading the team, when we started back in January, and the big question was, well, who makes the decision? Is it Rod Wood? Is Sheila in charge of this team? Who's in charge of this team? And it was, no, this is a team effort. This is a team effort. It is truly about servant leadership. If you want to understand what this management style, what this leadership style is, you look into that and you'll see exactly what they're doing. I'll take that then. I want to talk about somebody else who was on the field. We saw him up close today, Deuce Staley. He's exhibiting that exact same type of thing. Watching the running backs today, it was Jamar Jefferson pushing this. I've never seen it before. I don't even know what it's called, but it's some wooden little sled that's flat on the ground, and he's in like a pike position, and you got to really get behind it to make it move. And he went from the goal line to the 50 and back. And at the end, he was able to make it like 5 yards of a shot, and he'd take a minute, and you could just tell he was in pain. He was suffering. The whole group of running backs got around him at the end. Two of them got down on the ground and were in a pike position, crawling next to him as he was doing it. It was that kind of camaraderie, that kind of support for each other, that kind of thing you never saw in the last few years in these Lions training camps. Deuce Staley kind of exhibits that model, brings a lot to these players, and really brings that camaraderie and that level of teamwork to a new level. That's when you're willing to go to battle for somebody, that means a heck of a lot more than when you're out there just kind of doing what you have.
And I think one thing that needs to be said is, as we sit here and just kind of tear apart what happened over the last 3 to 5 years, is, look, these guys were successful. It's worked for them in another place. It didn't work here. And, you know, Matt Patricia came in with a well-earned reputation as a defensive whiz,
Yep.
and has rings to prove it and had stats to back it up. It didn't work here. You know, Bob Quinn was part of a very good personnel department in New England that year after year surrounded Tom Brady with the guys that they needed to surround him with to win. It didn't work here. And it just, you know, a lot of the things that we're talking about aren't part of that program that they have in New England and that those guys tried to bring here. They kind of take the personality out of, except if it's too big like TB12, they kind of take the personality out of the team. And you just become that kind of entity that moves in this block motion.
You know what's different here, though, is Matt Patricia, one place. Bob Quinn, one place. The guys they brought in were largely New England mentality based.
Yeah.
Dan Campbell is a hodgepodge. You know, he started off as a Bill Parcells disciple. Everything was the Parcells way, but he's gone and he's moved on to these different spots, and he's picked up a lot of Sean Payton's new age aggressiveness that you know kind of was against what he grew up on.
Yeah, it's very different from what Parcells thought.
And he's molded stuff, but he's also brought in other guys that come from different systems than him, and so it is this mode, this mentality of evolution and various viewpoints coming together to make a singular, unique product as opposed to a clone of something else that anybody else that's tried to clone has failed.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Justin and Dan. There's a lot of former players on this staff. I've seen how that impacts them. I'd like to get your perspective on we've talked about Anthony Lynn being an NFL running back. Deuce Staley was a running back. They know who Antoine Randall L. was. They know who Mark Brunell was. They watch these guys play. How much do you think that gives credibility to the new staff?
That's the number one thing, right?
Yeah.
It's credibility, but the credibility goes beyond their playing days. It goes also in their willingness, after most of them long, successful careers, to go back to the bottom rung and work their way up. That shows their commitment and their drive to succeed at a different aspect of their profession. Aaron Glenn was getting coffee at his first stop, and he's gone through some new positions with scouting. He did that little GM role with whatever tiny league that was. I don't even know what it was, but and then he starts as like a low-level defensive assistant. That resonates with guys. He knows what it is to grind. And that resonates with players as well. It's not just what he's accomplished on the field, it's what he's been willing to do to get back to the top of his profession in a different capacity.
Yeah, because I think if you're a former player, you may get somebody's attention because of that, but whether or not you keep it comes down to what you're talking about. It is is your commitment to the job. How do you relate? How do you teach? How do you engage? All these things. And I think we've seen through the guys that we're talking about that these guys are engaging. They are good teachers because, absolutely, I think, real knows real. These guys understand if somebody played in the league that they can talk the language. But that only goes so far. This relationship has to be much, much deeper than what you did as a running back for the Eagles or something like that. It's much deeper than that because now you're helping this guy with his career. And what goes in one ear has to work for him and resonate and has to matter.
What I think is interesting is you always, you know the staff when you're doing this job. And you can look through a staff and say, okay, maybe that guy's got a brighter future. I remember the first time for me was Matt Burke with Jim Schwartz. He was a linebackers coach early on. You're like, guy has some head coach potential. Now, listen, he hasn't reached that, but he's been defensive coordinator and stuff, so you can just tell he had it. You don't always see that stuff. And this one, Lynn has already been a head coach, and very well could be again someday. But I would say Aubrey Pleasant, Aaron Glenn is going to be a head coach in this league
soon.
If they have a modicum of success, 2 years. He just has it.
He does.
It's tough to explain what it is. He has it. And then Deuce Staley.
Not to mention the fact, just to interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
If you turn this defense around, Justin,
Yeah.
that says even more because this defense for 2.5 of the last 3 years has been awful.
It's very similar to me and to Tyrell Austin in a lot of ways, right? Like he took a terrible defense, he turned it around.
Yeah.
He was on the cusp of head coach position. But the difference between Tyrell Austin and Glenn, there's something in their demeanor, something in their intensity. With Glenn being the more intense individual that just screams head coach, authority, command, respect, and Deuce Staley is also in that mix.
Yeah, there's some charisma. And you have to have that as a head coach. You have to have that when you walk in the room. That's why I always say, when we talk about an opening press conference and taking something from that, look, these guys, by virtue of where they are, know the game and can talk the game. And they have some measure of charisma to get to the point that they are. And those guys have it, which will get them in the door.
Yeah, those three I mentioned, just off the chart with their charisma. That is what it is.
All right, let me go a little bit and talk about, Dan, you talked about this, it has to translate to wins and losses. So if we think about that, the end of this year, let's look ahead and let's prognosticate a little bit. This is possibly a 5-win team. We'll just put that number out there. How does this group of coaches with 5 wins maintain the focus and the dedication of this team into the next season going forward?
See, I think starting with the top, when they walk in and basically understand that Matthew Stafford's gone and you're essentially starting over. When Stafford was here, there was always you could be enticed into saying, man, we get this quarterback. If we get 2 players, we can really we can beat it. And it never worked. It just, it just didn't work. It was time for a change. But I think that the plan that they have in place is one that they're moving at their pace. They didn't go out and throw crazy money at free agents. I think that this is about assessing what they've got this year. They're going to try to win. They're going to do everything they can to win. We'll see how many they win. I don't know what the number is going to be, but I think the most important thing they do this year is set their to-do list for next offseason to find out how many of these young guys can be part of the solution and how many of them need to be replaced. Because what they're trying to do with these coaches that we just talked about is make them into part of the solution. And ultimately, from Jared Goff on down, they have to figure out exactly what these guys are.
There's a reason they signed a lot of one-year contracts.
Yeah, sure.
Definitely.
You're out from under Stafford's contract after this year and everything.
Let's go into next offseason, see what you got. You've got some more picks, you have some more money, and you can start plugging away at the holes then.
And you can really turn it around quickly in this league.
But
you have to have guidance and vision.
I keep comparing this to the Dolphins' current situation, right? So, help me with the coach name.
Brian Flores.
Yeah. I'm still on vacation, but it's slowly coming back.
It's all good.
Yeah. Brian Flores comes in, right? The expectation is tank for Tua, worst team in the league. They trade off a bunch of assets before the season. It looks like they're going nowhere. And instead, they go out and they win 5 games. They're competitive in a ton of games.
They were.
And they somehow still get Tua, which is interesting. They go into the next season and they start making the moves, right? They start spending the money. They start trading for players. They have the draft assets that they acquired and all those giveaway moves. They win 10 last year. I mean, they're on the cusp of a press spot, and that team is pointing up. They continue to build. I don't know what the long-term future of the Dolphins is. I don't know what the long-term future of Tua is, but the vision came together. The team plays hard for its coach. And I get the sense that that's what this is going to be. So you want to see a Lions team. Yeah, they might win 5 games. You want to see them fighting tooth and nail. You want to see them in games where maybe they're losing a tight one in the fourth quarter that you expected them to lose anyway, but they fought harder than you expect. And that goes to the wire. Week 18, they're fighting to the wire for that last one.
And you know what progress looks like? It doesn't have to. Yeah. It doesn't have to be wins and losses. What we were seeing last year wasn't progress.
It's the opposite of.
Yeah, it wasn't progress. There was just you couldn't look at anything and say, boy, this is coming along. And I think that the eye test, I think, will say a lot about this team this year in terms of where they're headed. Are they well coached? Or are they just making the same old mistakes that we've seen? And that's why I'm so intrigued to see this defense. That's really what I want to see. I mean, obviously, Jared Goff is a big part of it, and I'd love to see what he can do. But I think there's more talent on this defense than what they showed last year in the way that they played. And I'm really anxious to see what this coaching staff can do with these players. Because I looked out there the other day and I say, okay, Rockers, there's a lean, there's Nick, there's on the outside you got Flowers, and on the other side you got Aquari.
Potential.
Top 20?
Yeah, we were talking about this today during the practice. That it's very reasonable to expect this team to be a top 20 defense.
How hilarious would it be if they end up being top half of the league?
That'd be great.
I mean, what kind of indictment is that?
Of the rocket scientist defensive mastermind.
And Justin, okay, so let me throw this to Justin, who's out there every single day studying this thing. And Justin, you guys have seen Justin's film breakdowns and things like that. I'm going to put you on the spot. What happened? What happened with this defense? Why did it go so bad? And if you don't know, it's fine. I don't know either.
I think it starts with the front seven, right? Like the linebackers never performed the way they envisioned in the scheme. They wanted problem solvers, and they never found that guy that was the problem solver, right? They couldn't stop the run. First and foremost, that was the priority. You can't stop the run, therefore you can't rush the passer. Right. And we want to blame the secondary. The secondary was awful as well, but
how long are you gonna ask them to cover?
Yeah, you're covering for 3.5 seconds. I don't care if you have Revis back in his prime. Like, he's going to lose in this era of great wide receiver play across the league.
especially when you're playing good quarterbacks all the time. Last year was a difficult schedule.
This era, man, of offenses.
You can't be passive on defense. You have to have an aggressive plan. You have to take something away. And the last defense they didn't want to do that, and it seemed.
I'm sure they wanted to.
Well, yeah. I'm not sure that they had a cogent plan to make that happen, though, and it was very frustrating. That's why I'm rooting this year so hard for guys like Jamie Collins, who I know is a very good football player, and I know cares very much. Guys like Trey Flowers, who we all know, that guy can really play. And another guy who loves football, and the fans would embrace him a whole lot when it shows. We know Okwara is really good. He's capable of doing things on his own, almost against the scheme. There's talent on this defense. There really is. I'm super excited to see what Okuda is going to do, what Tracy Walker is going to do. I'm even somewhat refreshed at Will Harris, who I've been banging on since they drafted him. I've seen some things this week that are like, you know what?
Mark that down. Jeff's excited about Will Harris.
I know.
All those things that you guys are talking about comes back to coaching and development.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys don't come into this league understanding how to play. You got to help them become NFL players. And I thought, you go back to Brockers. You drafted a couple of defensive linemen last year, a couple of defensive linemen this year, and now you put them in there with a pros pro like Brockers, who's going to teach them what it is. A, he can still play. B, what it is to be an NFL player. And those guys knew that. These are Rams guys who went out and got him because he can be that kind of influence. So
exactly.
It's coaching, it's veteran impact as well, and all of that.
But it cost him a 7th round pick.
That's an absolute steal. And by the way, the Rams didn't replace him. To diverge on the Rams a little bit, people who think that team's going to the Super Bowl just because they got Matthew Stafford, I would encourage you to look at their defense, compare it this year to last year. Two of their 3 best players in their secondary are now in Cleveland. Their second best defensive lineman is in Detroit. Their third best defensive lineman is in Baltimore. They are, and they didn't replace them at all.
And they lost their coordinator.
They did, yeah.
So third coordinator, right?
Yeah. Brandon Staley's now the coach of the Chargers, taking over for
And they just lost their running back.
Yes, they did. It's
That's not unfamiliar.
Man,
it's a dicey proposition to put all that on Stafford, and not to diverge to Stafford too much, but there's a lot of pressure on him to really make it happen, and he's aware of that.
Chris. Reel it back in.
I'm coming. I'm jumping on this train, taking a little further here.
Go for it then. I'll let you roll with it.
I want to talk a little bit about Jared Goff. There's things he can do to help this team, and there's things he can do to hurt this team this year. And I think both of them are almost equal likelihood possibilities. What do you think the things are, Justin, that Jared can bring and might bring to turn this team to a position that exceeds expectations? And then what are some of the things that might happen that he might have, some of his weaknesses that might pull us down below where we're expecting out of him?
Well, I think he's an accurate quarterback. I really do. You see, I think he has really nice mechanics. And one of the things I was really surprised about when I went back and watched his film was he's not considered a mobile quarterback, but he throws really well on the move. And that's both moving to his right and his left. And that is a fairly unique talent to have accuracy on the move. The number one thing that will hurt him if he does not fix it is turnovers.
Yeah.
Obviously a ton of interceptions. It felt like when I was going back and watching the film, it was at least one atrocious decision a game. Also has some fumbling issues. We saw him put one on the ground. I believe it was yesterday.
Yesterday when he wasn't touched, he was just running and the ball flew right out.
And that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
He's not a guy that deals particularly well with pressure. It's particularly pressure on the inside, so that leads to some of those mistakes. So
maybe inform some draft decisions.
He's got to reel in the mistakes if the offense is going to be some semblance of efficient.
Yeah. What do you think, Dan?
I agree with everything Justin said, but I would add this as well. You need to support it. You need to have a running game. You need to do the things that you didn't do for Matthew Stafford. That's a bigger, longer conversation that I've had before, and I'm welcome to have again. But you know what? You can make things easier on Jared Goff by supporting him. Well, look, we all know the receivers need an upgrade at this point. Let's see what these guys can do. That's probably going to be something you'll see them concentrate on after the season. But this offensive line looks really good.
Yeah.
Let's hope that translates into a running game. And it's like we've talked about before. Look, you guys have all been in this. We talk to coaches every single week. Coach, what do you want to do this week defensively? I want to stop the run, make them one-dimensional. Well, what have the Lions done to themselves for the last X number of years? They've made themselves one-dimensional, not on purpose, but by not being able to run the ball. So let's put that in Jared Goff's corner. Let's not put it all on Jared Goff. Let's give him something where he can turn around, hand the ball to somebody, make something happen, and all of a sudden the pressure on him goes down because play action works and you're not in 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 9 or 2nd and 9 all the time. So I just, look, he's got a lot of nice things on his resume. There are things that are troubling as well, as Justin talked about. But I'm anxious to see what he can do. If he's the solution, wow. Then all of a sudden those 4 number 1 picks can be used for something else, and it's a big, big boost to this turnaround. If he's not, you do have ways to go out and get another quarterback, but I'm far from saying he can't be the solution. You know, this guy's done too much in this league, but again, I think to put him in the best position to succeed, you have to support him.
Hey Jeff, can Jared Goff be the solution?
He could be.
Oh,
Yeah, he
I
could
did
be.
not expect that.
I don't expect him to be, but he could be. I'm hopeful that he can be better than he was in the last couple of years in Los Angeles. Because if you go back and you watch his tape from when they were really, even their playoff loss to the Packers last year, he was their best player on the field. He had a really good game. He didn't get any support from his teammates.
And he was hurt.
Yeah, so there is a good NFL quarterback there. My biggest worry is that they get through this year and he's good enough that we're going to roll with him next year and not take another quarterback. And then the year after that, he's the same, and you're stuck in that purgatory level. And it's sort of where the Bengals got to when they had a great defense and really good receivers with Andy Dalton. And
it's a great comparison.
And I don't want to see that happen because that Bengals team should have won multiple playoff games in multiple years, and they never did. And some of that was because they were paralyzed by Andy Dalton's ceiling. And I think that Jared Goff's ceiling is probably not where the Lions fans and where the team wants to be eventually. Maybe it can be. He did take a very talented core to the Super Bowl, but if you go back and watch that, he was good. Don't get me wrong on that, but they had a lot of talent and a lot of help around him, and it's very difficult to do that. We see that with Minnesota right now. With Kirk Cousins, who's another similar. I think Kirk Cousins is a little bit more talented. I think he's got a better arm, but they have to have 2 great receivers. They've got to have Dalvin Cook, who's an exceptional running back that gets slept on too much. They had a phenomenal defense. It fell apart last year. They actually had less sacks than the Lions last year, so that's because Danielle Hunter was gone. But there's a ceiling with that team with Kirk Cousins that unless the team around him is just amazing, you're topped out. Now, as the Lions fans, I think most of us would be pretty happy if they won a wild card game at some point. I certainly would be happy about that. But I also want to see beyond that. And I don't know that Jared Goff is the guy that can do that. I'm willing to have him prove me wrong, but I don't know, man.
We're having the conversation at a bad time. Listen, these 4 practices have not been very good. They just haven't. The offense has looked.
They've been tough.
Sluggish. We'll say sluggish, the nice way of saying it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of check down passes. Not a lot is working downfield, but it's the 4th day of training camp.
Right.
It's a new offense. It's a guy getting familiar with new personnel, both for him, but a lot of these guys are also the first year here learning this scheme. So I've seen a lot of guys go through labors their first month or 2 on the practice field. It takes a while to click. So
right.
What are we evaluating? We're evaluating way too prematurely. But right now it looks rough, and you're thinking, well, yeah, they've got those draft picks next year. If it doesn't work out, and you talk about supporting it. I do think the run game will be adequate this year. Will it suddenly vault into the top 5 of the league? No, but could this be the first time in 20 years that finishes in the top half of the league? Yeah,
they got the potential, absolutely. And I love the fact that they didn't get Todd Gurley because that's the veteran Band-Aid that they don't need.
Has he signed anywhere yet?
No, he's not.
Oh, well, maybe slow down.
Yeah, take it easy. This may repeat.
Yeah, last year I thought having Adrian Peterson, while there was a veteran benefit to what DeAndre Swift talked about after the season, it was great to pick AD's brain. At the same time, it took away from his development on the field, and I think that showed. And I think now that Jamal's young enough that he's still got some
26.
career upside. Yeah, they don't have that third wheel there. They don't know who their third running back is going to be yet. I don't think we know who their third running back is going to be yet. And it might be a guy that's not even here yet. We're hopeful for Jamar, but you don't know. But the fact that they haven't gone out and tried to plaster on a 30-year-old veteran who's at the end just because of name value, that's a positive to me. They need to develop. They need to see what Dan was talking about. They need to see what they have in the young guys. And I think that they're doing a very good job at that. You know, they're not going out and, well, there's a couple of receivers that fit that bill, but they're not necessarily going out and chasing after names that could help for a year. You know, there's some placeholders for sure, but they're also, you're going to see a whole lot of Quintez Cephas. You're going to see a whole lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown and seeing what they can do. And I think that's the smart way to go about this. And it seems through the camp so far, and then the way that they're dividing up the reps, that seems to be their plan as well. You know, yeah, we have Tyrell Williams, who's looked pretty darn good, by the way, and had a great day today. Rashad kind of riding the roller coaster as he's wont to do. And beyond that, you know, you're looking at the young guys, and there's some excitement there, but there's work to be done.
I don't think there's any panic in this general manager.
No.
I really don't. You know what? I may be wrong, and we'll see down. I think we're at a high water mark right now in this area in general managers. I really do. I think Troy Weaver was a badass.
Oh, yeah.
I think Holmes may well be a badass. I think we're looking at Steve Eisenman. We know he is. We know what he's done. Alavila, look, I know people have their problems with him. We'll let him sort this thing out and continue to do this rebuild. I think because he has more of a track record that we'll just let that go. Well, I just look. He's got some traits that haven't worked out. So you know, so we'll wait and see. But I just. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. I really think Brad Holmes is his own man. I think he's smart. I think he's in no hurry to do this thing the wrong way. I think he's going to do it the right way. And I think, if you remember back, Justin, Sheila Ford Hamp talked about the fact that he presented a very bold plan to her. And I think that plan involved doing it right and not doing it in a hurry to try to turn this thing around in 10 months. Because it doesn't work and it's unsustainable.
What can you do? I mean, right now, you can't have urgency. There was no way to get this team from the point it's at to Super Bowl contender in a year. It wasn't possible. So you had to look at the 3-year plan. You know, especially when you're told Matthew Stafford's not part of it. And you finally are unshackled from that expectation of trying to plug in those two pieces around him that you were talking about earlier. I've always said the rebuild starts the day they acknowledge Stafford's leaving. And so you present the rebuild plan. We probably are talking about 2023, where this is turning a corner and people can get legitimately excited about that wild card that you're so excited about.
Well, and I do think that there's some general managers, though, that would have come in and would have said, you know what, I've got to resign Kenny Galladay. I have to get this done. I can't let a talent like that walk out. I'm not paying a receiver $18 million a year, and it's not in my plan right now. It's not what we're doing. So I just think, I think it's really interesting. I love the methodical way that they're going about it, because I think we've seen it done the other way before, and it just doesn't work. And it's not in this league. It's what. How many teams have we seen that just go nuts in free agency, and 2 years later they're getting out from under those contracts?
The Eagles.
Well, the Eagles, we've seen it. The Dolphins in the past, we've seen it. There are other teams where we've seen them try to do it.
Cowboys.
The NFC's, yeah.
NFC East is pretty bad at that.
I mean, going back to the day of Washington, but that's not the way you build a team. That's not the way you build something that's sustainable.
Not in this league.
Nope.
It's different in different sports, obviously. This is a league where perennial success comes through the draft and plugging in one or two pieces a year in free agency.
And developing your later round picks, which is something that didn't happen, unfortunately,
not
all that well.
Yeah.
I won't bag on it all, but they needed to do a better job of teaching. Dan talked about that before. That's something that we've talked about as well on this show, is that having coaches who embrace the teaching role and development role rather than trying to be tactical geniuses. And that's not just Patricia. That shouldn't be intended as a shot at Patricia, but there was much more strategizing going on and less teaching, less football technique ability going on. And
I think judge it by second contracts. How many guys have you seen in that era that got to the second contract and said, gotta keep him?
I think this is funny. I think it was a conversation we were having last year. Like, who got better on the defense? And it was Okwara and it was O'Rourke. Like, well, those were like the two that you could say they got better. They got developed. That's not enough development. I mean, you need it to be across the board. Everybody should be getting incrementally better, and multiple guys should be making that jump from fringe starter to solid.
Let me ask, because you talked about O'Rourke getting better.
You got it.
And I wonder how much of that was his work, especially after hearing Jeff Okuda this year about the coaching that he got last year and the differentiation of, oh, I wish I had been told that last year. I wish I had known that and been coached in that way that year. I mean, hearing that, how much of that do you put on Amani, and how much of that do you think? 24.
Nice.
You know, it's weird because like we talk about, you know, all these former players having influence. Well, I mean, those guys had a former player in Steve Gregory who was pretty well respected as an assistant DB coach and really got the DB coach job. And you know, I think he did some things well. I just think that the limitations of the scheme, the consistency of playing the same style down in and down out with not as much variation was what held that group back, and obviously the lack of pass rush too.
No, I think that's a great point. I think it's, you know, you can have good coaching, but if you're put in a position where you just can't succeed, I think it becomes very difficult. And, you know, we talked about supporting Jared Goff. Well, support your defensive backs. Give him a pass rush. Don't let Dak Prescott get to the post game and tell Justin that he went through his, progressions 3 or 4 times. And our eyeballs pop out because it's like no quarterback ever says that. And it's like, we knew it, but then we finally heard it. And I think that kind of crystallized everything that we had been seeing, where quarterbacks could just sit back there and pat the ball, and ultimately at some point guys are going to get open. So, you know, Amani may have been well coached, but I don't care who you were. We're going to have a hard time without a pass rush in this league finding a way, as you guys alluded to. So
Didn't hurt. He was the only guy that was healthy all last year.
True too. Yeah. I think he's got some really intriguing physical attributes that he can develop into a really nice player in this league. I mean, time will tell, but he's got the length. I think he's got the intelligence, and I'm really excited. I'm excited to see this defense. I really, like we said, I think there's more talent on this team than what we've seen in the past, and I want to see what these guys can be.
What do you think about, speaking of the talent on the defense, Jelani Tavai has been a guy that he's been a lightning rod for criticism. Partially the defense, not a fast guy by the measurables that they have out there. He comes back this year, he's shrunk a lot. he's in shape. He's looking really, really good. This is obviously his year to really to make a difference. Justin, what have you seen so far in camp from Jelani, and have you seen anything that you say he's a different kind of player this year than he has been previously?
I didn't see much today because he left.
Yeah.
I don't know where he went, but might be dealing with a little bit of injury. But yeah, listen, much smaller. I can't remember the exact amount of weight he lost.
I think he said 27
He
pounds.
said he was playing up there 270.
I mean, I'm down 15. Like I could use another 12, so I'm gonna have to check.
Patricia made Justin gain weight.
Depression will do that to you.
I want my beat writers to be big guys.
So I think the one thing I noticed in the early portion of the Austin program, I haven't seen as much in their camp. I'm not gonna tell you I have, but I saw a player that was more adept in coverage. It seemed like he was moving better. It seemed like he was covering guys better. Wasn't always resulting in an incompletion or a breakup. He was there, and he was keeping pace on the routes with the backs and tight ends, and I think that was a positive progression. It wasn't easy. Probably on the outside looking in, certainly on a starting job, but even like a role within defense, right? Like he's like Jalen Reeves-Maybin was last year, and who didn't get that role in the defense, ended up with a special teams role. I think Tavai's got a lot of work to do to claim a role. That's probably Anzalone's job right now, and Derek Barnes is going to get some playing time probably in that Tracy Walker rookie role where he gets kind of sprinkled in and build some confidence for a bigger role in year 2. So I don't know where Tavai fits in the defense, but I appreciate and respect the commitment he made when he could have given up on this team in this city who, it wasn't working well for him. Everybody else had given up on him, so why not? give up himself, but he went out and he put that effort into the offseason to take it seriously and to get to where he's at to compete for that role, and I respect that.
It'd be great to write the story of redemption for Frigilani Tabai in Detroit. I hope we get to write
It's
it.
too late for teas.
It is.
We're gonna do the Tabai story.
And Jared Davis. And
Man, I liked Jared Davis so much as a person.
Yes.
I always said the dude's a coach's dream. Just to eat, sleep, drink, love football. And to hear him talk in his press conference this week about how he was at the brink of retirement, I just felt bad. Like, it was depressing to hear that because
He's such an
loves the game so
effervescent
much.
guy, too.
Yeah. And, you know, there was talent there. It did not work. It didn't work.
It did not. Let me ask you about another linebacker that I've had my eye on, Sean John Hamilton. Do you think he's got a shot at making it?
Yeah,
He popped a couple times over the last couple of years.
He
He's
has.
like a random guy that like Campbell mentioned in one of his early press conferences. Like, I can't believe we got this guy off waivers. Like, he was excited. Play of the day in practice was at his expense, unfortunately.
Yes.
He had really good coverage on Hawkinson on a fade to the corner of the end zone. Goes up, makes the deflection. Awesome. Didn't deflect it far enough. I don't know how Hawkinson reeled that in. Got both feet down in the corner. It was
an amazing catch.
Amazing. Like there's that video replay board we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
The reporters look comical probably. We all crammed into like this little corner where we could view it to get the view
We're
of
like,
the replay. Did he actually catch it? He did. It was amazing. And then the next play, Jamar Jefferson just smoked him on an escape route. I mean,
Yes, he did.
they say you gotta have a short-term memory or you're gonna get beat twice by the same play. I wonder if the Hawkinson catch impacted the next time. But yeah, he's another linebacker that moves well. He offers something in coverage, but he's got a good-sized frame to help out run support. I think he's absolutely in the mix. We're still day 4. We have not seen pads. The front 7 and the offensive line are almost impossible to evaluate. You get some of the coverage stuff with linebackers, but otherwise it's just impossible to evaluate how much and how successful they're doing it at this stage.
We do get pads Monday, is that right?
Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember which day.
Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
really quick, want to just...
I'm wearing mine on Monday, but
Nice.
everyone has them.
Nice.
For those who are asking what the heck is going on here, this is our annual training camp party joined by Dan Miller and, from Fox 2 News, if you don't know, Fox 2 Sports, and the voice of the Detroit Lions, the best NFL voice on the radio, no questions asked. Also, also Justin Rogers from the Detroit News, our favorite boot beat writer. We've said it since the beginning. He's the guy that brings you the straight dope every time. And it's always great to see his stuff. We're joined, of course, the Riz is here doing our party. Hey, everybody, everyone having a good time?
Mikey is the guy who would bring the straight dope. Maybe that's
That is not the
Different
right
reference. Speaking of that, we are sponsored by Diamond CBD. They will have giveaways later this evening for
It's legal now.
It's absolutely legal, and Mikey knows that comes from a place of love.
pain, anxiety, or insomnia. CBD can help. Go ahead and check it out. There's some great stuff. Go to cbd.detroitlionspodcast.com. cbd.detroitlionspodcast.com.
I'm sure they love having their name attached.
Can you guys not tag Kyle on Twitter? I don't need that tomorrow training camp. Like, just cut it. Cut it, Chris.
Maybe you can win the door prize and share it with them. Okay. All right, we'll move on. I want to talk about the wide receivers specifically. I know we touched on it a little bit. Amon-Ra, St. Brown, he's stunned. To me, he looked really good the way he runs routes. Very crisp, very clean, mobile, was impressive. I liked what I saw from him. My feeling right now is the next wide receiver we're gonna find on this team is gonna pop up on the day we cut to 53. I think that's where we're gonna find him, and he's gonna be a starter. I think that's where we're gonna find somebody. From you guys' perspective, we talked about Goff. These guys have a direct implication on how Goff is going to be judged this year. Dan, what do you think with this wide receiver core and Jared? I have a sense that Brad Holmes might lean a little toward Jared Goff's favor, knowing what he's got at the wide receiver position. What are your thoughts on what that group is going to do for us this year?
Well, I think, again, you can help these receivers by having a balanced offense. I think that would be one thing that I would throw out there. I think, look, Williams has shown that he can play in this league. He's, I don't think he's anybody's number one necessarily, but I think, Perriman has bounced around, and this kind of same story has been written where he's gone, which is, redemption, and this is the right place for him, and he's got to show that it is. This is another opportunity for him to do that. So I think it's fair to say that this is a position that they have not gone out of their way to necessarily address in a big way at this point. And these guys are all on prove-it type contracts where they have to show what they can do. But all we can go on at this point is their track records. And you're not dealing with Kenny Galladay's or Marvin Jones anymore. You're dealing with guys that have more question marks around them.
Here's what I loved on paper when they signed these guys. Williams, blazing fast. Perriman, blazing fast. Maybe you can remember the stat for me. I think second and third, or maybe third and fourth in yards per reception over the last 5 years across the NFL.
Yeah.
Deep threats, right? And then you complement that with 2 running backs that can catch the ball in the backfield, a tight end that is clearly a plus receiver, plus receiver, and you bring in a guy that I'm going to call possession receiver in St. Brown, and can operate underneath with decent route running, decent hands, ability to do something after the catch, right? And so I'm thinking, now you got 2 guys on the outside that can stretch it, and if you're not going to attack the deep parts of the field, which I think Goff can, I saw a good deal of corner routes and post patterns in his LA film, but they're going to draw the safeties and the linebackers out, and it's going to leave that underneath open for you to feast with your guys that can do it. The problem is we haven't seen it yet. It just hasn't clicked to this point in training camp. And I'll say this about St. Brown. Like, I don't want to bury a rookie now.
It's not fair.
It's not fair at all. But one of my colleagues wrote that he's a sleeper fantasy option. Get out of here with that. I'm not going to recommend any person in fantasy football draft a Lions wide receiver because I don't hate anybody that much. I just don't.
Not even Mikey?
Listen, you want to draft TJ Hawkinson? Great. You got to be in a 2014 league with 6 wide receivers before you put the line out there. I watched St. Brown's film too. I didn't get a chance to watch all the college prospects, but there was a lot of USC film out there, so I got to see 7 games. He had that awesome first quarter. 4 touchdowns in the first quarter. Never seen anything like it. It's crazy. The rest of that film was pedestrian. It just was. I just didn't
There's nothing that he really hangs his hat on other than just being really well prepared. He's not a dynamic athlete. He's a good athlete, but he's not special speed. He's not specially quick. He's not especially strong, even though his dad is Mr. Universe. There's just no defining trait for him.
And you said today that you like what he saw. Today was his best day of practice.
Definitely.
That catch on the goal line, and listen, it was a 3rd down and goal. He didn't get into the end zone. He ended up just a half yard short. Another one where we were running over the board to verify. But covered by Okuda, blanketed, low throw, pulls in an incredible catch. It was progress. It's the best I've seen from him. But if you're expecting 60 catches out of this rookie this year, you're gonna be disappointed. He's probably a 40 catch guy for 400, 500 yards as the 3rd option in the offense, assuming everybody's relatively healthy.
Dan, one of the things you talked about was the blazing speed of Perriman and Williams, and it seems like most of the talent for the passing game, and I don't want to say these guys are untalented, so please don't take this the wrong way, but it lies in Hawkinson, probably Jamal Williams, maybe Swift in a way. It seems like it's all short to mid-range. What do you think these guys are going to look like with that speed? Are they going to, if you remember Corey Fuller, he had all that speed, but he was never a threat, right? Because he just couldn't hold on to the ball. What do you think of these guys? Are these guys that are going to actually put a threat out there?
Do they become more of a threat if you can run the ball and you bring a safety down into the box, and all of a sudden the speed that Justin's talking about becomes much more apparent on both sides of the field when you only have one safety back there? Goff can look one off and you got one-on-one coverage on the other side.
And play action.
Again, play action, run the ball, make these guys more effective, okay? Maybe they're not, the equal of some other receivers in this league, but I think if we have sat and watched receivers torch the Lions over the years, they weren't all Pro Bowlers, but they had the defense off balance. guys got open, quarterbacks in this league can find you. These guys are capable players. They may not be stars, but they are absolutely capable players. But again, go back to, and I sound like a broken record, balance. Keep the defense off balance. You be balanced, keep them off balance, make them respect everything, and all of a sudden these guys get better because as Justin said a little bit earlier, okay, so you got Hawk here, okay, you can even have Fells here. You got these guys here. You got Swift coming out of the backfield. They got to make some choices at some point. And those choices might leave Perriman or Williams or St. Brown open somewhere. So again, you can elevate, I think, what a guy can ultimately contribute to a team by being a balanced offense. And I apologize for repeating that over and over, but I think it comes from years of sitting in the press box and watching an offense that wasn't balanced. And look, I'm as big a Stafford fan as you're going to find, but if Matthew's time here proved anything, it's that it's very difficult to win in this league if you're a one-dimensional team. Yep. And it's very difficult to sustain success if you're a one-dimensional team.
You know, I know you saw it from the press box, but when you go and you're trying to run the ball and they're in their base package and they can stop you when you're in. They can be in dime defense when you're in 11 personnel, and that happened a lot.
It wasn't for lack of trying.
Right.
I mean, how many years have you gone in, thinking, I think they can run the ball this year, and it just didn't happen, and it hasn't happened, and I don't know why. I think this is probably their best setup to do that. This offensive line looks really, really good on paper. Swift. Williams has shown that he can play in this. The last couple of years been over 4 yards a carry. Swift, we know what he's capable of. So we'll see if it can happen. And if it does, everybody gets better.
Man, you guys just reminded me of one of the first times I really dove into film for a specific game. And I remember the Lions were playing San Francisco. I can't remember the exact season, in 2011. And they ran the ball too much. That was the narrative. Why'd you keep running? Why'd you keep running? And I remember watching the film and it's like, well, shit. Like, San Francisco's in nickel with 6-man boxes. Like, you had to run, and you still couldn't. But that's what the defense dictated. I know you want to dictate something on offense, but you had to run the ball over what they were showing you, and they just, I guess Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman make that difficult, but that's what it was. I did want to make one more point about the receivers that I guess I took for granted at the time, and you talk about the yards per carry, yards per reception for Williams and Perriman. Well, I guess I'm not really considering that Williams was going against the number 2 corner and Perriman was probably seeing the number 3 corner. Now they're going to see an upgrade in the coverage that they're going to see on a week-to-week basis. Williams is now going to get the number 1 corner from the team, and Perriman's going to get the number 2 corner. I don't know if they're going to be able to elevate their games to match that.
That's tougher. I covered Rashad when he was in Cleveland. It didn't work out well for him. He's so enigmatic because he will make some great plays. We've seen him make a couple of really nice catches in the last couple of days. We've also seen him not be where he needed to be at the right place and right time, and that's something that's been indicative of him from his whole career. And I'm hopeful that there will come something out of it. But I think, unfortunately, in Detroit, he's somewhat cursed by his last name. People remember his dad. They remember Brett. They remember what kind of a player and what kind of a person he was.
He brought so much.
And Rashad is a different cat than his dad was.
Looks a little different too. I can't believe that the frames are from the same genetic pool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Rashad is a very impressive looking physical specimen. He's very well put together, but it hasn't always translated for him. And like you said, they're asking him to play probably 1 spot higher on the depth chart than he should be, maybe 2 spots. It didn't work well for the Jets last year when that happened. There's limitations on what we can have with this passing offense with that type of thing. And to Chris's point, I actually put this in my roster projection that the number 2 wide receiver on this team isn't on this roster right now. I wonder if you have any reaction to that.
You guys both said that.
Yeah.
Do you got any names you want to throw out there? I'd like to hear your bold prediction. I don't disagree.
No, I think...
I don't know about number 2, but I think it's very likely they find a contributing wide receiver. So I'm curious.
I think you're going to see, I'll go to the Browns for a second. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a very good potential wide receiver. He's their number 6. Now, he might move up, and that might jettison somebody like Rashard Higgins, who was a free agent that I know the Lions kicked the tires on a little bit. So somebody like that can come in. Washington is going to cut a good receiver or two, believe it or not. They actually have an abundance of talent there. I think you're going to see Houston. Who knows what they have, I think, 13 wide receivers in their camp right now, even after getting rid of Randall Cobb, who, by the way, was not going to make that team, and Green Bay traded for him anyways. Good job, Packers. You wonder why Aaron Rodgers is upset. There's a good reason why. There's going to be receivers who we recognize and who we know their names, and they're not going to be great receivers. I've watched Rashard Higgins his entire career. He's a solid guy. He's actually what you described Amon-Ra as. A 40 to 50 catch guy who's going to do good things for you, but isn't going to be a dynamic number one. And I think you're going to see at least one of those guys come in.
Probably not going to find a dynamic one.
Probably not. No. Might not find one in the draft either. Who knows?
Did you and I were talking about Khalif Raymond the other day at practice?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're kind of intrigued by him.
Yeah, like
he's fast.
That's when you're starting to look like lower in the depth chart. Where's that energy going to come in? Ratley's another guy that just like the last couple practices has like suddenly started. You mentioned Boyle with the deep passing. Well, Ratley's been his guy, and today it was Raymond. I was really surprised when I looked up Raymond originally. It wasn't a guy I wasn't very familiar with. He looks like a slot receiver. He didn't play slot.
No, he didn't.
He was more of an outside guy, and I thought that was really intriguing. And then you see today when he goes out and has the deep pass where he blows by the corner. Listen, it's a third string cornerback, but still you see why that worked. But the Lions have been using him more in the slot. They've been tinkering with quick outs and bubble screens and even some jet sweep end around stuff. Like he's got some juice. I know the return game stats aren't as good as you want from a return man, but you see almost like a Jamal Agnew-ish role developing for him, but with actual receiving experience, so that those deeper routes are in play that really weren't with Agnew.
Cool. All right, I'm going to write down balanced offense. Justin Williams, tell us spell balance for me. Riz, go ahead and hit the next question.
One of the things that I'm curious about is and it's written right here, Jeff Okudah.
Caps lock.
Yes. I wrote in cap lock so you can read it, Justin, because my handwriting's atrocious. We have seen. We saw him at his worst last year. Obviously, the abdominal surgeries and everything, and we talked about this a little bit before, but your just reaction to the different person that we're seeing, because it really is like they got a different player this year.
I think we were standing next to each other and kind of talking about it. It was a pre-snap situation, and just the way he came to the line and the way he looked over and communicated with the guy next to him, and even the look in his eye, like it was weird because Campbell had mentioned something about body. Like the body language that he was exhibiting was something that was showing me the confidence he had. And it was in that moment, it's like, there's just a ton of swagger in this guy before the ball's even snapped. And he's gotten into some stoic philosophy. Just we all have things that we look to kind of help us, and that doesn't interest me. But if that's what interests him and that's what helps him achieve zen on the field, then so be it. But listen, it's been a really, really good start to camp for him. This was probably his worst practice, and he still looked good at times today. Definitely. Right? And he's had breakups on long passes. He's been reading and reacting and charging hard on short throws. He's in position constantly. And not only that, but he's kind of taken on this leadership role that maybe you wouldn't expect for a guy
that has really stood out to me in the 2 days that I've been at camp, is that this is a guy who is trying to exert his leadership. He understands that they need an alpha dog, and he wants to be that guy. And it's not unnatural for him.
There were some things last year where, it was such a weird year, right? Like he didn't get the off season, and
right.
There's no open locker rooms or whatever. But there's some things I saw with him last year. I'm like, he doesn't quite get it yet. He doesn't quite get the professional aspect of it. He was a little squirrely with interview requests, and you hear about a guy that's really, really mature, and then there's areas of who he is that just isn't there yet. But you see all that taking off this year. Like it's just a guy that seems more mature, more comfortable, more professional, and physically he's right, and he says mentally he's right, which he said is even more important than being physically right. So I think there's very good reason to be excited about what Jeff Okudah is going to bring to the table in his second season.
I think the reason he was drafted where he was drafted, those reasons are still there. Those attributes are still there. I think of the guys that benefited from a complete change and a new beginning and a clean slate, I think he was right there. I just think you said it, mentally, physically, he was just never right last year. And I think you have to be excited about what he can be. I mean, look, we know the physical talent is there. I mean, drafted 3rd overall. And that doesn't mean he's going to ultimately be that good, but it does mean that his ceiling is really high. And I think that, you know, again, give him a pass rush. Don't make him cover for that long. And stand next to Lomas and watch the defense last year where these guys were asked to play 10 yards off the ball all year long, and Lomas would just go nuts every time. I think we'll see a different type of Okudah, more up on the line, using his physical attributes this year as well.
You know, this was an off-the-record conversation I had last year. I didn't write it. You know, we're past the time where I can talk about this a little more, but I was talking to a scout that was covered Ohio State, you know, outside of the Lions, but you know, it's just kind of getting a feel for some prospects before the draft, and it was trending. Okudah, we all saw it was trending that way. It was that or Derek Brown, right?
Yeah.
So I remember asking him, I go, okay, Chase isn't going to be there for the Lions, probably. Like, tell me what you think about Okudah. And he goes, I like Okudah more than Chase. And I said, and he goes, I raved about Jeff Okudah in our draft.
Chase Daniel.
Chase Young.
Whoa.
Chase Daniel.
I was just trying to get my bearings.
You got me off balance.
You were definitely.
He actually said, in this draft class, I would have no problem telling my GM to not only draft Jeff Okudah number 3, I would tell him to draft him number 1 overall. And I thought, let's go. And it wasn't Mel Kiper. It wasn't.
But we didn't hear that.
But I just remember hearing it, and I was just thinking, like, wow. And he said, like, the kid's just so polished. He doesn't have any flaws in his game.
Yeah.
He just saw the floor as so high, and the ceiling is.
I had a similar conversation with that with a Brown scout who evaluated Denzel Ward from Ohio State, was the number 4 overall pick, and is a Pro Bowler and a damn good cornerback. And he said that Okudah blew him away, and that Denzel would agree that Jeff Okudah was better than him as a prospect.
Damn.
I had a similar conversation with Bob Quinn, who said he would have no trouble drafting Okudah at number 3.
And he did.
How about that? So can we talk about that for a second? Because this came up, somebody on Twitter asked me, how serious did they consider...
There wasn't a shot, by the way, it was just a joke.
How serious were they in trying to trade that pick? Thank you.
You got buttons?
I do. I finally found one to use.
You know, did they seriously shop that pick, to your knowledge?
Look, I think absolutely he looked around. I just think you have to have a reason that somebody wants to trade up, and you know,
It's so expensive to go that third.
Yeah, it takes 2 teams to do it, and I think teams knew that the Lions were not going to draft a quarterback, and they just said, okay, you know, we're going to sit back and wait on this thing, and San Diego got their guy, and LA got their guy, and Miami got their guy, and I think, look, there's a lot of things that you can get on Bob Quinn for. I'm not sure that's one of them. I just don't know that trade was there for him that made sense. And that's just from the outside looking in.
Was a preservation. You couldn't, with your job on the line, draft a quarterback. In hindsight, yeah, they needed a quarterback, but he couldn't do it with being told winner, go home.
Agreed. Absolutely. All right. I want to take a minute and just thank Dan Miller first for joining us here at the party.
I appreciate what you guys do. I appreciate what you guys do to bring the fans in and to get them inside the Lions and get them fired up about the Lions. You guys are the best out there. I appreciate you guys and everybody that checks in on Twitter. And you know, you guys are just diehards. You hang in there. You love this organization, and believe me, they feel it. And I had the conversation today with Brad Holmes, and I was talking to him about a comment that he made when he got the job at his opening press conference. He said he told his mom, I feel like I can really make a difference there. And I asked him if that was his understanding of the fans, the history, and the need for something to be turned around here in Detroit? He said it was, and that's why these guys are doing what they're doing. They're here because they understand what you want, and they're trying to bring that, and we're all going to find out together if they can get it done.
I thought he was recycling Dan Campbell's speech to the fans earlier today, but he took it to a different place. There was some fresh stuff there.
Also want to thank Justin Rogers, both for his great stewardship at Detroit News and his great writing. He brings a lot to the fans, and he brings great information in a way that is not like so many others. And we talk about it on the show. We get into messages, we see it in the chats and everything else. And Justin,
let me say this before Justin says goodbye. These guys, we're really blessed in this city with the beat writers that we have covering this football team. These guys are really good, and beyond that, and I'm saying this sincerely, these guys work their tails off. I mean, these guys are banging away on their keyboards all day. They have to be on call all night. I have such respect for Justin and the other guys that are on the beat. They do a great job, and believe me, when I need to be updated on something, I go to Justin, I go to Kyle, I go to Dave, I go to Chris, and we are really lucky to have the guys that we have covering this team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dan also called me once and he's like, hey, do you want to do a show for the news side to talk about Colin Kaepernick and flags? And I go, no.
That's Hugh Perkins coming to me and saying, I need a guest for Let It Rip.
I'm good. Like that's a lose for me.
Yeah.
No, I want to echo. Like I really appreciate what you guys do. I know we got off to a weird start. Yeah,
okay, hold up.
God damn it, Case. Didn't even show up. But like, yeah, the first show we did, I think I was on for 90 minutes.
Way too long, man.
it was a low ratings point for you guys, but no, I mean your professionalism, and it's such a high quality program. Like you hear fan podcasts, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but I get a lot of requests, right? And sometimes like when the request to be on a podcast comes through, and it's like I only have so much time to give, right? And when the guy comes through and he's got 25 listeners, like I want to be there to kind of support, but I just don't have the time. And when went in your program first, I didn't know what to expect, and I was so blown away with how professional the production was, the thoughtfulness of the questions, and what you do is so good. It's such a high level, the highest level I can imagine for what you do in the space you fill for this fan base. So I'm also really appreciative of what you guys are and what you do.
Thank you.
Not Jeff.
Yeah. I know you were talking to Chris. Yeah. No, it's a lot of fun having you guys in here.
Payment arrived just in time.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, it's great that you guys were able to come out. We're very appreciative of your time. I know, Justin, I know how much our time is valuable, and for you to donate this tonight after going out to a graduation party today, it's awesome. And Dan, this is your third one with us.
It is.
That's pretty darn impressive.
Dude, listen, you come up in this business, you just want somebody to want you around. You just want somebody to actually want you to be somewhere. So it's like when somebody asks me to do something and they're cool guys like you and great people like you guys and fans and stuff like that, I'm happy to do it. And it's funny, people are always like appreciative. I'm like, I'm appreciative that you actually want me around.
This is also how we feel about our marriages.
We'll do some Tony Ortiz stories after we finish. All right, those are always good. All right, we just want to give a quick shout out. You guys know we've been raising money for Fisher House in Ann Arbor. They're trying to build the VA hospital. It's like a Ronald McDonald House for the VA. It's the best way I can explain it. Takes care of the families, no cost to them. Gives them a place to stay while somebody's getting some work done at the hospital. We're over $3,500 raised so far for Fisher House to help build the hospital downtown in Detroit. They're starting, they have the one in Ann Arbor that is the base right now. And I want to thank everybody. Remember, every shirt, $4 for every shirt. I mentioned $2. So $4 for every shirt, and then you can also go to givebutter.com/FHM/DLP and donate direct there. But thank you all for doing that. Thank you all for being part of that. There's somebody here, I don't know if he wants to be called out, we'll check out in a little bit. He's the guy that inspired that whole thing, and it's a heck of a story. If you get a chance, give him a high five, thanks for serving. Great guy. And from there, we're gonna call it a show.
Yeah.
We will go now to patreon.com/Detroit Lions Podcast. If you'd like to still support us, go ahead and do that. Hit us up on Twitter at DET Lions Podcast. DET Lions Podcast. At Justin Rogers. With an underscore, is it? Or is it just Justin Rogers? Neither do I.
No D in your name, though.
No D.
You were not related to Aaron.
Nah.
Good.
And which one is it, Dan?
Dan Miller Fox 2.
Yeah, there you go. Dan Miller Fox 2. Follow us all on Twitter. We all have something to say at some point. I don't know what we're talking this, but it's worth following for. And make sure to subscribe to the podcast so we can do what, Riz?
We can come into your ear holes automatically.
That's right, because that's what you want every day, right? All right. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll check you out next time. Remember, no pants, no hot tubs, no bad times. I don't have them for me.
No toasters.
No toasters, no hot tubs, all that stuff. Thanks you for joining us. The Detroit Lions Podcast, your Detroit Lions and Reddit.